even week 2 of Challenger Series, because pretty much everyone on Misfits is impressed, including Wisdom that last game. So want to see more from Ignore, but either way, we are into Champion Select, so we will get these bans down for you. First one will be Azir, Nidalee. Not really too much to write home about, very similar to first Champion Select, just in a different order.
Yeah, just to remind people again, this is 6.10.
That it is.
And simply because we had a couple issues with the 6.11 server, we have had to revert back, and all of the players are absolutely fine with it. And given the amount of experience and time they've had on 6.10,
yep.
I'm sure it's not going to phase them that much. And
indeed.
So, with Azir being taken off the table, they're basically saying, Selfie, you're not allowed to play that. We saw you play it against ESG in the playoff finals, and we thought it was pretty good, so you're not allowed to play it anymore.
Yeah, get that out of here. And Lucian as well aimed at a gap in the bottom lane. Do not care about the Draven at all. And they're waiting on that final ban. Out from Team Forge, what will it be? It's going to be mid lane, jungle ban, ADC ban, Wheel of Fortune spin. What's it going to be, Vedius?
For bans, you have to take the Rise off the table. Trundle is still open as well. Echo, still a good ban pick. Braum. Oh, okay. So we actually saw this from Team Forge last game. Largely due to Hiva wanting to play Alistar. It is his go-to champion, something that allows him to make plays all over the map. And given not only how powerful Braum is, but how powerful Braum is into Alistar, it makes a lot of sense for Team Forge to take it off the bat. And seeing as they're blue side, they don't need to ban things like the Rise, because they can just straight up first pick it.
So we are expecting that final ban to probably be the Rise. Out from Misfits, still a very strong champion. It's gonna be Rise. Yeah, pretty much as expected. So what's the priority? Okay, the priority is gonna be Echo coming out there for Mimic. So I'm gonna take that one away from Alphari as well. But interesting seeing a first pick Echo.
It's got to be a Trundle here, just to track from that point a second, because Misfits, we know in the past, throughout the qualifiers, if Trundle was open, they picked it because they loved flexing it between support and top lane.
Correct.
Dreams was a guy that was very good at that Trundle, so they are not afraid to pick that one up. But the Echo priority, likely afraid of Alphari's Echo. He was a big nuisance. He had a big split push presence. And even though a lot of ganks were put down onto him early on, he still bounced back and he was still having a massive impact throughout that game. So they don't want to allow Alphari to have that playmaking potential, and by forcing him onto something that's maybe a little bit easier to camp, maybe even camp, and something easier to deal with, it gives an opportunity for Team Forge to then build an advantage up in the top lane.
We are still waiting on the next 2 pickups from Misfits, and they've locked them in. It's going to be Swain finally coming back in this series, and Rek'Sai as well going into the jungle. So I believe we saw Swain in our first series of the day.
We did, game
we've seen it a whole lot in LCS,
So, I'm not personally a fan of Swain in this rotation. Simply because I think that while Swain is strong, and there are no counters, direct counters, in the sense that he can be flexed. So if he has a bad matchup in the mid, you can put him top. If he has a bad matchup in the top, you can put him mid. That's an advantage, but you're also tunneling quite hard now onto we need to team fight. And we need a way for this Swain to actually get into the fights. So with a Rek'Sai, you're not doing that. And the problem that we had earlier on in the day was that Nerve were not picking a way to start off the fights. And because you didn't have that engage, there was nothing for Swain to follow up on. So he was just kind of running like an awkward bird at the enemy team. And it was very easy to either just focus him or play around him.
Well, at the very least, I hope someone gifts that. Yeah, now taking a look at Team Forge, Trundle picked up from them. Interesting. So I guess that will probably go into the bottom lane as Victor has been picked up. Or we could see Echo go into the jungle and then Trundle go into the top lane and then still have the Alistar out from Hiva. But any of these things can happen because we did see Echo brought into the jungle in CSQ. So, and it actually did well both times it was played. So it's a possibility. Lots of flex.
Big fan of Echo Jungle, actually. I think that he has a lot of playmaking potential. You can still build him full tank, and he does a very similar job to what top lane Echo does, but just from the jungle. You go for the Cinderhawk, you can go into Frozen Gauntlet, and you can then go into your full tank stats. So you're slightly denied on resources, but depending on how your comp plays out, you can put him in a split push role. I mean, if we assume that the Trundle's top and the Echo is jungle, then you can have a 1-3-1 setup right there for Team Forge. So I think it still works in the jungle. You still have pretty good ganks, especially if you're forced to flash. And onto a Swain, it's a perfect target that you can sit there and camp.
Yeah, the only reason I say it is I feel like with Alistair still being up for Hiva, is like he'd still want to pick the Alistair if it's up, right? And then you would flex the stuff elsewhere. So, so waiting on that. Maybe we'll see the Zyra. Europe hasn't really caught on yet. On the opposite side, we did have Thresh and Kalista. You were talking so much about Kalista earlier.
Ah, yes. So we've seen this from Reckless primarily in the LCS, and it's a mechanically intensive champion that is going to fit Hans' playstyle to a T, really. This is something that he is very familiar on. He's been playing it for a very long time. I believe he played it throughout the Spring split. He was playing it even before that. And this is the engage that Misfits needed, because you can throw your Thresh into the middle of the enemy team, drag them all back in with the Flay into the box, and then you have a great way to start off your fights, with then Hans Sama dancing around the Swain, who's just going to be walking up and being this awkward frontline that everyone hates to play against. So I like the adaptation from Misfits compared to what we saw earlier from Nerf, and this is working out right now to be a well-rounded teamfight composition coming out from Misfits.
So I'm looking at Team Forge right now, who have picked up Draven and Tam Kench.
Okay.
This time, actually with Alistair being available, actually gonna not pick that one up. So Hiva's just like, all right, we're gonna make the Draven work. If you're in any pressure, I'm just gonna eat you and we're gonna run away.
Yeah, and it's actually really good into the limited crowd control that's coming out from Misfits. If we think about you have the never move, you have the knock up, and you have the thresh hook.
Yeah.
If you get hit by any one of those targets, gobble, safety.
Yeah.
You're fine. So it's a good pick in the sense that it can provide adequate peel for the Draven, but it's also slightly better against the Kalista, because Kalista, fairly short range, you can be very obnoxious with the Tam Kench, and I think that, again, it's just sort of like in this lane dynamic, you can just gobble him up at any sense of danger. The potential pick that you have from Thresh is not that much of a big deal, and if you're going to focus down onto the Tam Kench, then Draven's just going to run up and hit you in the face with his axes.
Yeah, he will do that. Final pick was actually Vladimir going over to Misfits. So we know that Swain's good right now. We know that Vladimir's good right now. So why not just pick both of them and have all of the sustain and just never die? They will probably survive until the ends of the Earth. Everyone else would have died of old age, and they'll still be sustaining away in the respective lanes. So yeah, I'm digging the never die comp.
The Never Die comp certainly going to be coming out, and they're all rocking blood skins.
Oh, yeah. Apart from Swain, who's a running tyrant.
Swain.
Yeah. Still good.
But still, like the thematic theme that they're going for. But in particular, it's just a heavy teamfight comp from Misfits. They've said, we can play skirmish. Now they want to try and demonstrate that they can play these teamfight compositions as well. Primarily grouping up around these dragon objectives. They're going to be waiting a little while to complete their major items. You're going to want that Blade of the Ruin King. You're going to want that Spirit's Visage come over with the Rylai's that on the Vladimir. Swain wants that Roa completed. So might not see as much early game action, but you definitely should see some action towards the 15 to 25 minute mark.
We'll see how it pans out as we get into game, but use the hashtags 4G win and MSF win for who you think is going to take game 2 of this best of 2. Of course, the first game went to Misfits, as they will now swap up sides, and Team Forge will head onto the blue side of the Rift as they all jump off the spawn pad and will be fanning out into their jungles. Maybe going for an invade, maybe not, who knows?
So, arguably, for Misfits, this is one of their toughest opponents in the European Challenger Series, just based off of what we've seen. That's obviously very open to debate. This is the first week, but picking up a 2-0 over 4G would be absolutely monumental, because after the discussions we've had, I think that we both agree that 4G is sitting somewhere near the top of the table and where we expect them to end. So for Misfits to have such a dominant performance this early on, I think really sends a message to the other teams in Challenger.
I mean, it really is all about sending that message as you start up. Only 5 weeks, of course, so yeah, every win counts, getting every point possible. Because we've even seen in LCS how teams are just like, a draw, 1 point, it's nothing. But because there's 3 points from a win, that's what it's about. But let's get into this.
So what I'm actually quite excited about is the fact that Ignar has now played 2, I don't want to say unconventional supports, but supports that we're not used to seeing as much. He's brought out the Tyke in game 1, had a great game. He's now bringing out the Thresh. Now, Thresh isn't necessarily a bad support, but the only people that play him are, like, Thresh mains. They're true people that have religiously played Thresh their entire lives because he is quite
Before
a difficult
League of
champion.
Legends even began.
He was in their soul. So he's quite a difficult champion to master. He's only works in particular situations. There are many ways to play around him, especially early on. You have to manage your abilities quite well because he has such high cooldowns that if you miss one of those abilities, you can trade on him very easily. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ignar bring this one out and how he makes it work.
Yeah, still, that pick can be deadly in the right hands. Kind of like the Lee Sin of bot lane, right? Where like every player will like play it to some extent, but like you'll get the really mechanically gifted players who will turn that pick into something godlike. Handsammer on this mechanically more intensive champion. I would actually say Caitlyn is still pretty mechanically intensive now, yeah, with her new combo. Before Caitlyn was pretty much not, but now she is. Ignar's going to be roam. He was doing a lot of roaming last game, actually.
He was,
trying to make plays in the mid lane. This time, he's going to annoy Taiki. Mid lane, Wisdom is going to be camping, but difficult to make this happen. Ignar, he's actually got all the way around, and Taiki, he's still going to try and pick this up. I think he'll be fine. Wisdom, respect flash from Jizuke. Hiva is going to be chasing down Ignar. He's got the angry fish, and he's going to eat him up, spit him out towards Taiki. He's going to flash away. Meanwhile, Wisdom's going to come into the fight, but right into the gravity field for first blood to Taiki. Bit of an odd play. Parallel Convergence going to try and get this stun down. Doesn't land onto either of them, but Ignar's still being eaten alive already by Hiva. Jizuke going to pulled into tower, but Selfie doesn't have the damage to deal with it. Doesn't really want the catch that Ignar's caught him. And that was ultimately just a 1 kill to 4G.
So this time, Wisdom gets punished for the over-aggression of Ignar. He stayed just a little bit too long. The rotation came out from Hiva. He managed to consume Ignar, who had his flash available, but Wisdom had already used his flash to set up that gank in the middle lane, which had not worked out. And at that point, a lot of dash down onto Hiva. At that point, it was very much just a matter of Misfits should have looked to disengage. Wisdom overestimated the damage. Vladimir can't do that much early on. Rek'Sai could, but because he was stunned up for such a long time, he couldn't really have an impact. And it just resulted in Team Forge being able to pick up their first kill.
Yeah, Wisdom as well, just kind of walking into that gravity field was an issue. But we shall see how the rest of the game goes for Wisdom. Generally, I feel like the first kill, the first death tells the game for Wisdom whether he's going to do well or do badly. Because he'll either go like 5-0 or 0-5. So hopefully this is not one of those games. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Taiki bringing the Echo to the jungle. Already gone for that Hunter's Potion. And he's going to be pretty okay with the early game. Especially with that first kill as well. So he's going to be very well sustained with the Tracker's Knife. And constantly getting those wards into Wisdom's jungle, trying to track him down. Top lane, Mimic up against Alphari with this matchup with Swain coming in here against Trundle. Seeing more Swain nowadays, pretty strong pick. Generally don't see it also in conjunction with Vladimir, but also going to pick that up in this game.
It's a really nice combo though.
It is. I'm surprised we don't see it more. Alphari is going to get caught out by Taiki, but not by the Parallel Convergence, so it's going to hit him a couple times across the head with his bat, and then back away. Generally, you don't have both of those options available to you. You don't get like Swain and Vladimir in a rotation, but
yeah. But yeah, the ultimate coming out from Selfie actually enhances the damage of Alphari. But yeah,
enhances everyone's damage. In fact,
enhances everyone's damage, but Alphari's in particular because that's who Vlad's favorite is.
That's not true. I see.
Not true. Just disclaimer, that's not true.
Not a game mechanic,
but. Misfits again, Alphari, suffering a lot from the pressure coming out from Taiki. You already burnt out Alphari's flash, and this Swain will be a lot easier to camp, especially with that Trundle pillar being so suffocating and just preventing you from being able to escape a lane where you have Taiki coming in from the flank, and it just makes your life so difficult. So keep your eye out on Taiki, who's likely going to be looking to set up another gank in the top lane, and as we discussed this already, Taiki hanging around in the bush.
Yeah, Taiki was recalling, but he stopped as Alphari stepping forward, and the wave is pushing towards Mimic. So this gank could still happen. A good parallel convergence in the right place. Alphari, however, is level 6 versus Mimic and Taiki, who are both level 5. And Alphari going to use Never Move, and here's parallel convergence. Alphari is going to back away, gets caught inside the parallel convergence. The pillar knocked him into it, but Alphari took the reverse of damage. He
Yes,
actually
he did.
healed through that trade, and actually Taiki and Mimic took a lot of damage themselves.
He got stunned, stood there, and just healed everything back up. That is so unfortunate for Mimic and Taiki. Mimic not being level 6 meant that he did not have his Subjugate available, and that just resulted in Alfari just straight up out-sustaining, excuse me, sorry, the damage coming out from Team Forge. So
Literally negative damage.
literally negative damage. And now that Swain is starting to be a very big nuisance for Mimic, as you can already see a CS discrepancy starting to develop in the top.
Yeah. Oh, Wisdom's going to start this camp. He saw Taiki, and it was just like, this is fine. I was going to take this away, but Taiki's going to smite the chicken, the raptor. That's what I was looking for. And we'll just walk away. He has the Razor Sharp. He knew that area was not warded. Wisdom will now go onto the red buff. I'm colorblind. And take that one away. So we're going to have the buff going over to Jizuke. That will be the blue buff from Taiki. And meanwhile, in this bottom lane, I haven't spoken too much about it. Gap falling behind in CS just in the laning phase alone. But hasn't died, so he's still stacking on up.
To be fair though, in the early game, Gap did actually have the advantage. The problem is now he's playing a little bit more cautiously because Hans is level 6. And with that Fate's Call, he's in a little bit more danger. He is a low mobility AD carry that's quite easy to get dumpstered on if that Thresh gets on top of your face. And the fact that he was only level 4 means that in terms of base stats, he really doesn't have that many right now. So that's forcing Gap to play a little bit more reserved, which is resulting in this CS discrepancy that you're seeing between the two bottom lanes.
Wisdom, he's lying in wait. Ignar is roaming once again.
So this is how the Vlad Victor matchup typically plays out, where Vlad is constantly pushing the Victor underneath the turret, where Victor is primarily concentrating on just clearing the waves. It was a really interesting adaptation seeing Selfie invest all of his mana into just forcing the Vladimir back in game 1, because then he could get through the relatively rough early game, and then once he'd gotten his upgraded Hex Core, then he could match the wave clear of the Vladimir. And he didn't end up falling that far behind during the early game, but that's not what Jizuke is doing, as he actually goes for the all-in.
Disco Ball comes up, and Ignar, he's ready to dance. Heaver's coming out here. Wisdom as well. Flash away from Jizuke. He's got the Hemo Plague on top, and not going to be enough damage to finish him off. But that will be the entire trade fizzling out.
That was a good flash from Jizuke, because if he had not avoided the Tides of Blood from Selfie, that would have been a kill going over to the Vladimir. Early game damage of Vladimir, demonstrating that when you have that Crimson Rush, you certainly have to respect it.
Taiki clearing this red buff. Bot lane, Gap is still finding away. Actually going to get a lot of that farm discrepancy back. Top lane, Mimic is feeling the pain that is Swain when he has his ultimate up and all of his abilities and all of the mana, because Mimic can't really trade against him unless he pops ultimate, at which point actually popping a Subjugate right now just so he can farm the minions, I guess, so it stops Alfaro from just punishing him on the tower. Will most likely go back right now that he's popped Subjugate, or just stay in lane. Okay.
Well, he wants to get as much farm as he can, wants to hold on to that TP for as long as possible, because it is a valuable summoner spell, as now Taiki has found Selfie in the mid.
Yeah, Selfie's just going to walk it off, he's fine. Wisdom taking away the blue buff. Sometimes we see Vladimir actually want that buff, but not today. Going to give that over to Wisdom, who also doesn't use mana. Alfari, never move, but Mimic just really wants farm. Oh, bottom lane, Handsummer used Fate's Core, but Heaver and Gap were just not in range.
Yeah, so it looks like Handsummer actually wanted to set up a play because Gap was slightly overextended in the lane, but the moment he saw the Fate's Call, immediately disengaged, and Misfits couldn't set up the play, so now without that engage potential in the bottom lane, Gap can afford to play a little bit more aggressively. They just have to be wary of Wisdom's positioning.
Oh, Ignar has found Heaver. Going to put the damage down onto Tam Kench. Very difficult to deal with that situation, though, because it's like, well, if we focus the ADC, he's going to be eaten up by Tam Kench and they run away. Or we focus Tam Kench, who's very tanky, and then if we do kill him, then we can kill the ADC. But by that time, he's probably run away anyway. So it's frustrating for the 2v2, because you can't really get a kill.
But that's disadvantageous. Hang on a second, look at the top lane.
Flash away from Mimic, but flash after by Alfari. Gonna force Mimic back into Wisdom using Never Move. Great pillar though in the bot lane. Handsama may be caught out. He's gonna try and get to the wall, but the Lantern will save him. Taiki follows after with the phase dive. Whirling Death comes across, hits both of them. Meanwhile, mid lane Selfie get hit up by the Chaos Storm. Is gonna get chased down into Sanguine Pool. He's away, and the ultimate even heals him, so he is even better than Jizuke, who burnt all of his mana, and that will mean that Team Forge will take the first dragon of the game, which will be Ocean. Meanwhile, Ignar over the wall zones him into Selfie. At least he didn't give him an assist, but Selfie would be happy to pick up the herded kill.
So the fact that Jizuke did not have his flash available meant that Selfie could just run up using that ghost to quickly get the damage down that he needed to get himself the kill. Ignar, as you said, was there to just act as a presence, but that's just only one of the many skirmishes that were happening all over the map. A dive came down onto the top lane, trying to get that kill down onto Mimic, but with a great pillar, he was quickly able to disengage. And meanwhile, in the bottom lane, Taiki tried to set up a gank onto Hansama, who was forced to burn all of his summoners, but thanks to the Lantern coming out from Ignar, they were able to make it to safety. So again, we're seeing this very skirmish-heavy playstyle between both the teams. This time, Misfits aren't able to accrue as many advantages as they were able to get game one, but I still feel like right now, they're the ones coming out ever so slightly ahead.
Oh, Taiki, he walked on up to the top lane, but there is nothing to gank right now. So mid lane, Selfie picked up the Proto Belt. So actually going as a first item. Sometimes see it as like a second or a third item, but if you are really far ahead in your lane and you have nothing to fear from your natural predators, which aren't really any for Vladimir, then you pick up Proto Belt.
Also being ahead means that you don't need the magic resistance as much as you do, you know, the matchups. We saw in game one, Jizuke actually prioritizing the Spirit's Visage because he wanted to make sure that he could deal with the pressure coming out from Selfie. But Selfie says, no, I don't really need that magic resistance right now. I'd much rather just have that extra dash, that extra bit of mobility, so that I can get onto the backline in these team fights, have that extra bit of damage, but also if a gank comes mid, I'm going to be a little bit safer.
So update on the stacks, Gap currently has over 420 stacks, so he's in pretty good shape. He will be a big cash in for him.
420 stacks?
Yeah, he's now got more than that, but just crested that mark, so he's in pretty good shape. It's just about getting that one kill now for Gap, because that's all he needs. He just needs to kill someone. But he needs to be careful at the same time, because if he dies, then game's over. Just right, like the game just ends.
A little bit melodramatic, but yes, it would be very unfortunate. As look at Selfie.
Selfie's going deep. Protobelt flash, ultimate into the Sanguine Pool. Stylish kill. He was going to eat up Gap. Keep the stacks alive. And Gap backs off to the tower. He's good for now, but looks like Misfits may be closing in around. Wisdom's right there, but nope, gonna stop the dive for now.
Jizuke struggling against the aggression of Selfie.
Get him, Heaver.
Demonstrating the power of this Proto Belt. It enables you to just get onto your targets. Jizuke didn't have his flash available still. He did have his ghost, but it wasn't enough to avoid the flash, Tides of Blood, and Selfie gets himself a solo kill in the middle lane. So now, with a massive 40 CS advantage, this Vladimir is going to tank.
Yeah, Selfie's pretty strong right
just
now.
A bit.
2-0-0. He's probably at the stage where he can like start 2v1ing, and as soon as he starts getting some tanky items as well, like Spirit Visage, he's just simply not going to die. And in the top lane, Alfari's having a similar game. Like he's just not dying. And he's got all of this farm. Like they are just such massive threats that I'm not sure there's anything that Forge can deal with. And Selfie's continuously making spooky noises, which is just only really adding to the problems that Forge have to deal with.
It's all the Jizuke's soul crying.
Yep.
After his defeat. Anyway, yeah, the advantage has been accrued in both the top and mid because Misfits do have the lane advantage with the Vladimir and the Swain. As we were discussing earlier, this is how the Vladimir-Victor matchup should go, but it was just a nice adaptation from Selfie to change that in game one. But that just really emphasizes the strength of Selfie, really understanding these matchups, knowing the strengths and weaknesses, and when you can punish your opponent, even in matchups that shouldn't typically favor you, is why this guy has one of the best KDAs for all the mid laners in Challenger, or during the Challenger qualifiers. Correct.
Right now he has a perfect KDA, 2-0-0. That's pretty good. That noise, man. Like, can we just look at someone else? Yeah, let's just look at Heaver and Gap and Ignar taking this blue buff. ward over the wall, so he knows where those 3 players are. Misfits currently with that 1 tower over 4G, slight gold advantage. Back to mid lane.
You sound so upset.
I do. It's difficult to concentrate. I literally can't think of anything when I'm listening to that noise. Wisdom is gonna need some help with this. Alfari is luckily on the way, so he can get the true damage from hitting the eye. And 16 minutes into this game, someone is actually gonna take the Rip Herald. Welcome to Challenger, where we care about the Rip Herald. Unlike LCS, well, Selfie's gonna go deep onto Zizuke. Will not quite pick up the kill because Taiki was there to defend. Meanwhile, Alfari actually picks up a glimpse of the Void. Selfie's getting chased after, and hopefully when he dies, it will reset. But I actually don't think he's going to die this game because he's 2-0-0, massive CS advantage over Jizuke, and is probably the strongest player in this game outside of Alfari.
So this is actually, in a sense, a bit of disrespect because the Abyssal, he's basically saying, I don't need tanky stats, I'm hyper-fed. I mean, it's not entirely disrespect, it makes sense. It's a nice item to go on Vladimir. You want to be in people's faces. You can have that magic resistance debuff applied fairly effectively. It's just one of those items that you only go for when you're ahead. It's not the typical itemization that you will see from a Vladimir, but because he's got 2-level advantage over Jizuke, because he's at about a 40 CS lead, he feels confident enough to go, I can play super aggressively right now.
Yeah, it's like a double Widmore build.
Yes.
But without all the tanky stats. So if he gets caught out in a fight by some CC, he's gonna drop instantly. But they don't really have any instant CC. Team Forge just all have to like charge it up or hit him multiple times to get their CC up. So actually he's got like a lot of time to play with before he really needs to deal with that. So Wisdom's gonna go all the way over to the opposite side of the map using Void Rush, and Selfie's gonna jump in. The damage from Protobelt is actually pretty significant, and it's got a fairly short cooldown. It's like, what, 40-second cooldown? So he can just pop that whenever he wants to harass.
Yep. And it's got to a point now where even if Taiki comes, he can just 2v1 them. But the same is happening up in the top lane. Alfari is at a stage right now where he can 2v1 them as well, because he's completed the Rod of Ages. It looks like he could be working towards a Rylai second, which is quite interesting. As, oh, look at this, Hiva going for the play in the bot.
Abyssal Voyage, Hiva's following after Gap. He just wants a kill onto Handsauer, not going to happen right now. But he's still chugging along. And yeah, honestly, like Misfits, they have 2 members, as you rightly mentioned, who require 2 members to deal with. So right now, 4G just
4G needs 7 players.
Yeah, they do. They need more people. We need more men to throw at Selfie and Alfari, because right now we just can't deal with this sinking ship.
The problem for Team Forge right now is that they're slowly being bled out. Misfits have built themselves a 5,000 gold advantage just by winning their lanes. And this is not a promising trend for 4G as the game progresses, because that Vladimir is going to continue scaling. The Swain is going to continue scaling. Selfie's going to go for a kill in the mid, but Jizuke popping that ghost to just get to safety.
Yeah, he's not having a fun time. Bot lane though, engage onto Hiva and Gap. Here come the TPs. The cavalry's coming in. Handsauer goes down, but the kill goes to Hiva. No kill credit to Gap. Wisdom's coming into this fight. Triple knock him now. The teleport as well. Gap is going to run away and keep the stacks alive. Hiva is not caught inside the ring, so he's not going to get CC'd up for now. But unfortunately, he's Tam Kench and he can't waddle to safety fast enough. Selfie wants his kill to Gap. Oh no, the stacks, rest in peace. Oh, Taiki gets caught here by Ignat, who's going to drag him in. Chrono Break will get him out of the CC chain. At least combo breaker on that one. And they'll all back away. 2-for-1 advantage to Misfits.
So, a big fight down in the bottom lane where Misfits got a little bit too over-eager. They tried to win a 2 versus 2 with Handsauer and Ignat being the aggressors onto Gap and Hiva. Hiva just does way more damage than Handsauer was initially expecting. Getting gobbled up like that and just span out into nothingness resulted in what looked like a very promising start for 4G, but then the engage comes out from Wisdom. He comes in from the flank, sets up Misfits beautifully to then get the turnaround fight, and it ends up just being another team fight win over to Misfits. So have a look at this. A very early exhaust down onto Gap, and then the return exhaust onto Hans is actually what crippled him, and it prevented him from getting that kill down onto Gap. And now 4G want to try and set up a siege onto onto the turret. 3-man knockup from Wisdom is what ends up turning things around, and then you get the teleport coming in from Alfari. This is where they begin the chase, and what 4G don't realize is that you have the Vladimir coming in from the flank to then start cleaning up the fight.
And look at this, rest in peace stacks. That went from around 400 to 230, which would be around the 400 gold cash-in, which is pretty sad when it would have been over an 800 gold cash-in. So in this game, if anything was going to save them, like a large gold injection to the Draven, not even going to have that this game, Vedius.
I mean, 250 stacks is still decent.
Well, yeah, but it's not.
It's not 400 stacks.
No.
Well, as long as he still gets a decent gold payout, I don't think he can be too upset about that.
Yeah, but they are 5,000 gold behind in this game.
Yes.
And losing
the
everywhere.
bigger problem right now is the fact that Jizuke actually does no damage on that Victor. He's completed his Mark 1 Hex score, which costs 1,000 gold.
Yep.
And then he decided he wants to go for a Morello. Quickly realized, wait, I need MR because that Swain and that Vladimir hit really hard. And now he's quickly decided to go back into Abyssal. He has now completed it, but at the 20-minute mark. And if you just compare that against some of the items that are done from the side of Misfits, Jizuke is really going to have a tough time to have any sort of impact in these fights.
Yep, I want to see a full 5v5 team fight with Swain and Vladimir just like healing like stupid amounts of damage, because I actually don't think they will die right now.
They won't be able to heal the damage because there's no damage coming out from 4G, which is sort of their problem.
Yeah. Probably Forge will die before really getting anything done, and this is the inverse of what we really see from Forge. Usually we see them group up early, kind of like last game, honestly, where they group up and get an early advantage and try and keep team fighting, but Misfits are just straight up shutting them down before that even begins. Taiki instantly going to jump out of Chrono Break, and Gap gets a good ultimate down, but Wisdom and Selfie going to go right into this fight 2v4. Heaver's going to find maybe a kill here onto Wisdom. He's only down to half. Selfie going to get a kill, and there's going to regen so much health. Look at the regen out from Selfie. Eventually Gap will find his cash-in, but will it be enough? He's thinking about going in there against Ignore and Selfie, but signs better of it as Handsama joins the fight. Abyssal Voyage into the mid lane. Oh, Hook does not connect on to Gap or Heaver. Very close to being a kill.
Wow, so 4G thought that they had caught Handsama and Ignite out of position around the Baron area, but it looks like the Misfits were actually the ones trying to instigate that fight. You saw some really nice sidestepping coming out from Handsama to actually avoid the stun, but he was in a bit of a compromising position. He took a little bit more damage than he was initially anticipating, and that's really when the fight blew open for Misfits. And just have a look at this. Taiki gets hooked up initially. Handsama just on the edge of the stun, forced to flash out immediately. But a big multi-man ultimate coming out from Selfie, who then decides to just sit on the front lines and just have a look at his health bar, right? He uses the Q. He's then going to stack up the Crimson Rush. The hook buys him enough time to then get the Crimson Rush, which then allows him to get the sustain back. Yes, Wisdom does end up falling, but because Selfie got 2 kills, Misfits overall come out ahead in that fight.
That Crimson Rush with the missing health is the missing health heal is so good, and like he hasn't gone for any health either, really. Like he's got a bit from Protobelt, and then it's just all resistances and damage. Now 5-0 and 0. Like from here, he will go for those tanky items. He will go for Spirit Visage, maybe a
I think he'll go Void Staff Death Cap.
Void Staff Death Cap, maybe for extra damage.
He's got armor now with the Zhonya's.
I mean, you get enough AP, it translates into health, right? So I just kill building damage, and that's tanky stats for me.
Yeah, precisely. It's the obnoxious thing about late game Vlad.
Yeah.
Once you have, oh, look at Mimic.
Going for this 1 versus 1. Trundle not doing so hot. Alfari is not taking damage. Mid lane Selfie gonna jump onto Zazuke with the Proto Belt, and when he comes up, surely he's gonna die. A quick tide of blood and a transfusion will be all it takes in the mid lane. Selfie takes his mid lane tower. Taiki gonna jump onto Selfie. How many more resources does he have? Oh, Taiki back to safety. Ignar during the fight, and he didn't want that anymore. Bot lane also went down in the wake of that fight. 1 kill and 2 towers to Misfits.
Gap sitting up in the top lane. That is not where he needs to be right now, as Misfits trying to break in the base of 4G.
Taiki trying to run away. Heaver's going to try and help him do that. Mimics into this fight, but Ignore and Handsama just running over Taiki, and Heaver should be able to pick up this kill with the Rand. Heaver, he's got nowhere to go. He's got to laugh it off. And Mimic he's also going to get killed out here. Proto Belt going to kill him from Selfie. Gap did get a cash in. Maybe this is what will save them.
Optimistic.
Selfie still on his way out. Jizuke, big aftershock, but Selfie's still alive. Sanguine Pool, will anything kill him?
No!
Oh, no! He was alive!
Oh man, Selfie, you had the perfect KDA. You had the perfect set of your Ghost. It wasn't even Ghost. He got the movement speed from his Crimson Rush.
Ruined.
And then he decides to go back in. So unfortunate. So unfortunate from Selfie.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, Misfits, they get themselves the tier 2 turret in the mid. They get themselves the tier 2 turret in the bot. They get 1 kill down onto Mimic, and they get a kill onto Hiva. But have a look at this. 4G actually, with the death of Selfie, could pick up this Baron.
Yeah, actually they're killing this very quickly, but Alphari's on the way. Good. Gravity Field will zone him away. Baron over to 4G, and they should be able to get this pick onto Alphari unless he 1v5. Nope, he's dying real fast. Gap's going to lay the hurt onto him. And that was a really good play from Team Forge.
It actually was. Misfits, they go for the dive instead of actually taking the objective. Hiva's tanky enough, and with the consume, he's able to keep Taiki alive, and Mimic is just easily able to tank up underneath the turtle. He does end up losing his life here to Selfie, but it doesn't matter because all 4G have done is bought enough time to keep their structures alive. So the tier 3 in the bottom lane stays alive, the tier 3 in the mid lane stays alive, all because Misfits get a little bit too greedy. Then Selfie, this is the unfortunate play right here. He has the movement speed, he could just keep running away, but instead, maybe he just misclicked and it was a pathing issue.
No,
maybe he clicked.
It was literally a 180, but
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, well, I think thought he was already dead after the siphon power. Here comes the teleport out from Misfits, but it might be too late. Hansour is going to go down to Gap, who just eviscerates him. Taiki's going to follow after the Rek'Sai, but Alphari teleported into the fight, actually completed his teleport. Draven has come online in this game. Taiki will follow after onto Ignat. Should be looking for another kill. Selfie's going to try and get involved in this fight and see if there's anything he can do, but he's here just too late. 3 kills to Forge, and maybe a little bit of disrespect out from Misfits. Selfie's going to go into Sanguine Pool and pop the Ghost to try and get away. Hiva is still chasing after.
Oh no.
Jizuke going to be spat into the face of Selfie, who doesn't have his flash, doesn't have any way to get away. Now he's got the Sanguine Pool coming back up, and Disco Ball almost zapped him to death. Now with the bottom tower falling,
they're gonna lose it in here.
What is even happening? Team Forge just pushed all of these towers in bot lane, will take an inhibitor. Wisdom can't stop them. Handsama and the rest of the team now respawning. Maybe they can get a collapse down onto Team Forge. Nope, they're just going to back away. Even Mimic in the mid lane with a pillar coming up, he's also safe. And Misfits, I think we can definitely call this a throw. They are behind in gold now.
Misfits just gave away 4 turrets and an inhibitor in one play from Team Forge, all because Hans thinks that he can start a fight in a 2 versus 5. That was massive disrespect coming out from Misfits. Not only were they super greedy in the enemy base and they give away the Baron to Team Forge, they then just straight up disrespect the Baron. Misfits shouldn't be trying to make this play. Vladimir is nowhere near the rest of his team, and Hans Tama just gets obliterated before the rest of Misfits can even set up the collapse. It was such a big mistake coming out from Misfits, and now 4G are actually the team that are in full control of this game. After taking down that inhibitor, they can just look to rotate round to mid. They can have Mimic split pushing up in the top lane. At this point, Swain might not even be able to 1 versus 1 Mimic, given that the Spirit's Visage is being completed and he has Ravenous Hydra. Misfits, I feel like, made a big overstep, and it could very well cost them this game.
That's a very real possibility here, Vedius. I would still want to see like a 5 versus 5 team fight though, because Selfie and Alphari are still massive late game threats, being sustain mages and scaling mages. But Team Forge constantly found really good fights, like 3 or 4 in a row where they just got like 5 versus 3s where they outnumbered Misfits. Right now, Misfits have had time to contemplate life and will most likely come back into this game and no longer just go for these honestly dumb engages and really risky plays where they're kind of almost disrespecting Forge.
The problem is for Misfits now is, are they actually strong enough to force a fight? Because they're very divided right now. They have to keep one member bottom. They don't have the teleport on Alfari, so he can't be the one to sit in the side lane. And because of how far behind Handsummer is compared to Gap, they just want to get as much gold onto him as possible. And while this is all happening, 4G are just pressing their advantage onto this tier 2 turret in the top lane.
Selfie is still very strong. Just saw him chunk Taiki down with Transfusion, but still, we'll see how the rest of his game pans out. We are basically equal in gold now from what was a massive deficit from Team Forge. 9-9 in this game, and with those 2 dragons, this is as close as it gets, and it now is a equal playing field. Earth Dragon is going to be taken here by Misfits. Taiki is over the wall. See if he can get a steal here. He's going to be lining it up. Jumps over the wall. He's into the pit. Ah, he got the steal!
Oh my word.
And just back over Dragon Wall Z. He's good to go. Taiki, what a god.
That was so unfortunate from Misfits. The rend was just slightly miscalculated. There was no smite available on Wisdom. Taiki, I don't even think he used a smite. No, he didn't. He just jumped in, gets it with the E, and then he uses his ultimate to get out.
Fade out. The fade out smite. Ugh.
I could just see him like looking into the eyes of Handsummer and just giving him a subtle wink as he then blinks back into safety. Really nice
I
play.
can imagine that's what happened. Man, Team Forge actually in control of this game now. Top lane, still an issue. It's still Swain versus Trundle, but you can actually see how Mimic is pushed up now, where before Alfari was just shoving him into tower constantly. And late game Trundle is a pain to deal with, especially now he started itemizing way more than he was early into the game. There's 2 big completed items following after as well, with probably an Executioner's Calling. It actually looks like bot lane as well. Gap is also trying to slice through the healing coming out from Selfie and Alfari. So this is very quickly going wrong as the manure hits the fan for Misfits.
Yes, it certainly is. As Misfits are now struggling with a plan of what to do. They need that bottom inhibitor to respawn. Alfari's teleport is available, so they're just going to keep him there for now. They need to regain vision control over their jungle, which is why there are so many pink wards in their top half of the map. And with Baron spawning in 45 seconds, this could very well be the big point of contention between these 2 teams.
Very possible. 40 seconds left on that one. Selfie in the mid lane with the rest of his team. They are still a tanky ball of stats. They have a lot of health, they have a lot of armor, they have a lot of magic resist, they do a lot of damage. But in these fights, they haven't really been fights. They've just been kind of getting caught out and run down, and Gap is very happy with those situations. And again, Selfie is just by himself. Sanguine pull, Proto Belt. Taiki's going to pop back with the ultimate, and they're going to try and block the Lantern here. Not going to quite get it down as he'll make his way to safety. Selfie going to back off here. Gap's going to find him again. The Sanguine pull comes up. He's going to have to force the flash this time around.
Gap.
You can see the indentation of his face on that wall. But meanwhile, Alfari again just kind of comes in from nowhere and gets caught out and dies. This is another example of a horrible TP from Alfari.
Misfits just seem so uncoordinated compared to 4G, who, by just grouping up and forcing these players, are constantly catching Misfits out of position. Wisdom wants to try to go for the steal, but Heaver's there to stop him.
Heaver, he's over the wall, and Wisdom is way too late on that one and may just pay his life for it. Hook is going to zone him away, and Ignar and Wisdom are trying to make their way out. 4G are completely happy with that play and that turn of events in order to go back to base and spend all of that gold.
Overconfidence seems to be the thing for Misfits. This was something that we actually discussed during the qualifiers. How much respect will they show their opponents? When they played against ESG, they seemed like a very united team. They were very decisive. They were always making the correct plays as a team and not overextending. But after their convincing Game 1 victory and how handily they were winning the lanes in the early game, Misfits seem to have completely underestimated 4G, and now 4G are making them punish.
Oh, Wisdom. Tried to get away with Void Rush, but now with Taiki coming in, this may seal his fate. But a long-range Lantern will keep him alive, but I don't think you can say the same for Ignar. He's going to sacrifice himself for the greater good, perhaps. But another pick over to Team Forge, and they are pushing in deep with this Baron. The second one of the game going over to Team Forge. Going to try and start zoning away with Parallel Convergence and start putting the hurt down onto this inhibitor. Alfari is trying to put a bit of damage in return. Torment comes down. Selfie looking for the flank, but is just simply not there in time. And And 4G took that with like members to spare. This is actually a 3 versus 4 actually in that engagement, and they still were able to take away that one with with everything else happening. So now this push in the mid lane, Misfits do have the respawn on Ignite, so they should be able to stop this. They're actually going to go for the engage. Selfie, Sanguine pulls under the fight into the backline. Gap is going to be eaten up by Tam Kench. Mimic and Taiki are quickly being shredded. Kill down onto Selfie though in return. Taiki is split off from the pack and should be going down here by the bit of time by stunning down Alphari. A 2-for-1 trade advantage now to Misfits.
So this was the 5v fight that you were asking for such a long time. All of 4G grouped up to allow Selfie to get that multi-man ultimate off. Hans Summer was hitting onto multiple targets, Alfaru was hitting onto multiple targets, and Misfits finally looked promising in a team fight. These greedy builds have really started to hurt them, thanks to all the magic resistance that has been picked up by 4G, but still, they have a lot of damage, and that is exactly all they need to do to come out ahead in these team fights. They just need to set up in a way that allows them to get that damage off. Look at this setup. 3-man ultimate coming out from the Vladimir into the 2-man never move from Alphari, and then Selfie just buying time on the backline. Yes, he does end up dropping, but Hans Summer is completely untouched on the backline, freely dealing damage to multiple members of 4G, and if Selfie just had his flash available, it's very likely that Misfits could have continued on with that fight, but because the rest of the 4G disengaged, Misfits only end up getting 2 kills. They're still sitting at a CS gold disadvantage right now, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to win the next few fights, but as long as they get these 5v5s, there's still hope for Misfits.
Team Forge did go very deep for that play though. Like they went underneath that tower, and Mimic almost died by himself to the tower, being stunned underneath it. So still, Misfits, when they get that 5v5, are still very strong, and with Dragon coming up, the Elder Dragon, which will be a massive boon coming in here for 4G, Misfits will want to try and stop this one. It's going to be started off by 4G immediately. They have Mimic in the top lane. Selfie's over the wall, he flashes in, he's going to jump in with the Proto Belt right into the Sanguine pool. Meanwhile, Taiki's going to try and do the same, point blank with the ultimate. Hansawa chasing down onto the Trundle, picks up the kill onto Taiki. Alphari claiming that one. Meanwhile, Jizuke getting hooked into the fight. Gap's trying to kite backwards, doing a great job so far. Alphari is low, Dragon is coming in right here. Gap, he may be able to go big or go home. Dragon is still wailing down onto Selfie. Gap comes in with another E, not going to be quite enough. Dragon's down to half. Gap's coming in. He's actually just kind of assisting Misfits right now. He was right alongside him. TP out on to that tunnel in from Alphari. He's going to be able to zone him away. And the Elder Dragon is starting to reset, but will go down to Misfits at 1-5. And Misfits hold on to this game.
Misfits again forced the 5 versus 5 because 4G tried to pick up the Elder Dragon. They've already realized what happens if Misfits are allowed to get that multi-man ultimate combo off, but 4G just set themselves up perfectly to allow Misfits to make that play. Selfie comes in from the flank with the Proto Bout. We're going to see how it actually plays out. Just have a look at Selfie's positioning right now. He goes straight onto the back line, gets ultimated down onto all of the major targets, and he forces them to immediately play on the defensive. This leaves Taiki and Mimic to have to face off with all of the carries of Misfits, while Alphari just continues to buy time. He is soaking up so much damage, he's healing back up, and then once Alphari has taken away the front line of 4G, they can then start to clean up. Alphari just barely staying alive, and at this point, Gap is trying to pick up the Elder Dragon, but he doesn't have the damage. There are too many members of Misfits. They're going to get themselves that objective and slowly claw their way back into this game.
Man, this game has been absolutely ridiculous. We're now, what, 40 minutes into this game now? And it has been so back and forth. Misfits having that advantage early game, and then Team Forge getting that catch and base, immediately rushing Baron. That first Baron, by the way, they got 1,700 gold on their Baron power play. The last one was 1,300, combined 8,000 gold just off those Barons. And you can see how much they came back into this. But Misfits, it feels like they have finally regained control over this game. But only temporarily, I feel. 1 minute towards that Baron, and you almost have to think there's going to be one big fight is going to decide this game here, Vedius.
The inhibitor down in the bottom lane is still gone for Misfits. They need to be able to deal with that before they can look to make any further plays. The Baron is going to be spawning in about 50 seconds. Again, a big point of contention. And so far, every time that Baron has been up, Misfits have been the one to fall behind. The fact that the gold is so close and the fact that we've pretty much hit late game on everyone is going to result in these late game team fights going really either way. It's going to be very much about who gets that pick, who gets onto the right target. What we do know is that Misfits, if they're allowed to get this Vlad-Swain combo off, it is likely that Misfits will come out ahead.
I mean, really, you've got to burst them down, right? You have to make sure they die and stay dead, because if they drop to like 10% and the fight drags on, they're just going to heal back to full. So it's real difficult for Team Forge right now if they do face a 5v5, especially with that Elder Dragon. I believe it's just worn off. Yeah, it has now. Misfits still have control over the Baron area as it's now spawning. They also have the Scuttle Crab. They have the network of tunnels. Looking for that hook. Didn't quite land, but the tension's building here, Vedius.
Certainly is. The bottom inhibitor has now respawned. It's actually pushing in the favor of Misfits. The top lane is also pushing in the favor of Misfits. So Misfits are in a great position for this next Baron. The question is, how will Hiva and the rest of his team respond, as there's now all this pressure coming out from all the sideways. They have to respond to it, but if they do, that's going to give a very easy Baron over to Misfits, who, with this Callista, with the Rend plus Smite combo, are very likely going to pick it up too quickly for 4G to respond.
One of the big problems, though, is late game Victor and late game Draven poop out damage, and Misfits will have to deal with that. They're actually going to start off the Baron, trying to burn it out before 4G can get near here. Ignat is going to zone them away. Taiki gets dragged in. He's looking to jump over the wall. He'll jump in there, but it's going to be secured out from Misfits. Now 4G may have to turn tail and run. Taiki will jump back behind the wall before joining his team. Wisdom trying to get in here. He will burrow away. Selfie coming into the fight, but they can't quite get into the back lines to deal all the damage that they want to. Hans Sauer gets completely destroyed in the back line, and Gap is going to town. Finds the second kill. Alvari is going to be dropping here as well to the 5-man gang squad. Jizuke falling up into Wisdom. He'll be finding his kill for the ace. The 5-0, and Misfits are going to go down, and 4G will find their 1-1.
So even though Misfits are able to get themselves the Baron, they cannot get themselves the fight. The fact that Ignat dropped so early on, wasn't able to use his exhaust, wasn't able to have any sort of impact with his box, meant that 4G could just roll over the front line of Misfits and claim themselves the second game of this best of 2.
Gap closing in. He just wants to pad his stats, and what a performance from him coming back into this game, Vedius. And 4G are going to find this last kill onto Ignat with the biggest comeback so far out of 3 games in the summer split of Challenger. 4G take the game over Misfits.
Whoa, what a game.
What
that
a
should
game.
have been a 30-minute victory for Misfits.
Probably even less. I thought the game was going to end at 25 minutes. So I was like, yep, game's done. Easy 2-0, easy 3 points for Misfits to open up. And you were like, they're going to send a message? And I was like, yes, you are right, Vedius. And then it was just that misstep in the base, and pulling the trigger out from Team Forge, immediately going for that Baron, and then Alfari just kind of lost it and just kept going in with terrible teleports and just dying constantly. And it was just a downward struggle from there on out, but well played to Team Forge to pull that back to a 1-1 on the week.
There was still mistakes coming out from Team Forge. They gave the team fight over to Misfits when they really shouldn't have, but it just seemed to be Forge's forte around the Baron, because every time that Baron spawned, they were like, well, it's okay, because no matter what happens, if you get it, if we get it, somehow this is going to go in our favor. And it was really smart in the way in which they played that final team fight, because it was just a constant disengage. What you saw was the Baron go down. Taiki tried to get the steal off, but while that was happening, the Baron ends up dropping. Taiki's forced to use the ultimate to then regroup with his team, and all 5 members are just dancing back, dancing back. The Vladimir ultimate, that's now gone. The Callista, not in range to do the damage. She now has to get too close to actually start hitting onto any targets. You get a pretty good Never move, but it lands on 2 of the tankiest members of 4G. And then that just leaves Gap on the backline to freely do whatever damage he wants. Hans oversteps ever so slightly, gets caught out, and with him gone, that's it. The fight is won in favor of 4G. They then look to clean up the fight, and they actually take the game. So 4G, yes, they had multiple mistakes. Yes, they got dumpstered during the laning phase, but the fact that they could execute those late-game team fights off so perfectly was a real good demonstration of why you still have to be afraid of this team.
Also tells me that like the top of the table, even though we're just a couple games in here, is completely in flux, really, because like Misfits, even though we were talking about like how they may have the best players on paper, as a team, that was just straight up disrespect that we saw in that game. And if you play like that and aren't getting these points, then that can be a big issue. That being said, Team Forge definitely are.
But to me, I feel like they're almost going to be the gatekeepers of Challenger Series, where it's just like, this is a team that you need to be able to beat if you want to make it into the playoffs, but at the same time can go the full distance as well themselves. So I don't think you can overlook Epsilon. I think they still have the potency of the experience on the big stage. And, you know, we'll see what they can do as a unit.
I think some of the weaker lineups for sure that we've seen, like at least on paper in their first game, will struggle against Inspire. But I guess the big question for me is their opponents would be Millennium and how they deal. Let's check out their roster real quick before we start talking about them. Kaze in the top lane, Joko in the jungle, Pretty in mid lane, Tabs and Masterwork. Tabs actually now coming in for Hansama, as of course we just saw Hansama on a different lineup.
Yeah, and as you just saw from Hansama known as a mechanically gifted player that was able to pretty much outplay. Tabs, I would say, is a step down mechanically when you look at the players individually, but then you've got to account for what he brings from the experience. Much in the same way we're talking a little bit about Epsilon and, you know, their experience being in the LCS formerly. Of course, Tabs is going to bring that now to Millennium, you would hope, because honestly, I think that's actually something that team needs a little dash of. When you look at their performance in the playoffs last time we saw them, where they were overconfident in the last few weeks, came to playoffs and on the stage just really did not perform up to the level that we'd come to expect from Millennium. So maybe just that settling, you know, dissenting voice perhaps from the AD carry that can, you know, say, hey guys, we've got to slow this down.
Don't pick Riventop. Not a good choice. So yeah, maybe, because that is, I totally agree. I think the biggest downfall of Millennium, because man, like in regular season, we were touting them as like Origin 2.0, because they were just crushing everyone in every single game. They got to playoffs and they were like completely inverse. So also talking about like playing offline, because all of that was offline coming into playoffs and being like an online team versus that, but I've never really seen like that much of a stark contrast.